The night over the countryside was calm, the kind of silence that made every small sound louder. The moonlight touched the long grass in the empty field, and the only movement was the slow passing of clouds. Then, without warning, a bright flash tore the sky open. A small metallic shuttle appeared out of nowhere, its surface glowing with strange blue lines. It moved without a sound, lowering itself to the middle of the field. The shuttle door slid open, and two figures stepped out. They were young women, but clearly not human. Their heads were smooth and slightly elongated, with faint golden markings running from their foreheads to the back. Their skin was pale with a faint shimmer, and their eyes were bright, reflecting the moonlight like glass. They wore tight dark suits with golden edges, but both had heavy metal cuffs on their wrists and ankles. The cuffs glowed faintly, connected by thin energy chains that pulsed with light behind them. A tall alien guard stepped forward from the shuttle. His voice was deep and cold as he spoke in a language full of sharp tones. The girls lowered their heads, one of them trembling. The guard switched to a strange but understandable English. "Survive here, or perish. It is your sentence," he said. Then, without another word, he stepped back into the shuttle. The door closed, and the ship lifted into the night sky, vanishing in a streak of light. For a moment, the field was silent. Again, the two alien girls stood close to each other, shivering, not from cold, but from fear. They looked around. The air here felt heavy compared to their homeworld. The ground smelled of earth and grass, so different from the metallic halls they knew. They didn't know where to go. One of them whispered in their language, "We are alone now." The other nodded, eyes scanning the dark horizon, far away. The faint rumble of an engine grew louder. Two yellow headlights appeared on a dirt road, slowly approaching the field. It was an old human truck. Its paint faded but its engine steady. The driver slowed down as his eyes caught the strange shapes in the field. Jack Carter had lived in this countryside all his life. He had seen wild animals, storms, and once even a meteor fall nearby, but he had never seen anything like this. He stopped the truck and stepped out. The cool night air carried the faint sound of insects. Jack walked closer, his boots pressing into the damp grass. The two girls froze, their glowing cuffs casting a faint light on the grass. Jack stopped a few meters away, raising his hand slowly to show he meant no harm. "What are you?" he asked quietly. The girls exchanged a glance, clearly understanding some of the words, but not all. One stepped forward slightly, her voice soft but filled with tension. "Please, no harm," she said in broken English. Jack could see they were frightened. He noticed the chains, the cuffs, and the way they were breathing quickly. They looked cold and tired. He hesitated. He could drive away, call the police, or help them. He wasn't sure why, but leaving them there didn't feel right. He sighed. "All right, come on, let's get you out of the open." He gestured to the truck. They hesitated, then slowly followed, stepping carefully over the grass. Inside the truck, the girls sat close together, watching everything with wide eyes. Jack drove towards his farmhouse, the dirt road bumping beneath the tires. In the side mirror, he thought he saw a faint flicker of light back in the field. Unseen to him, a small, hovering alien drone rose from the grass, scanning the truck silently before disappearing into the trees. When they reached the farmhouse, Jack opened the door and led them inside. The warmth from the fireplace filled the room. The girls looked around like they had stepped into another world. Shelves filled with books, the scent of wood and coffee in the air. Jack gave them each a blanket. They wrapped themselves tightly, their eyes finally softening a little. Outside, in the darkness beyond the farmhouse, something moved among the trees. The night wasn't done with them yet. The crackle of the fireplace was the only sound in the room. Jack stood near the kitchen counter, watching the two alien girls as they sat close together on the couch, wrapped in blankets. They looked nervous, their bright eyes darting to every sound, the ticking clock, the wind brushing against the window. One of them touched the blanket softly, as if she had never felt something so warm before. Jack poured hot water into 3 mugs, adding some tea leaves. He placed the mugs on the table in front of them. "Drink, it will help," he said slowly, making sure to speak clearly. The girls exchanged glances. Then the one with faint golden lines on her cheeks reached out first. She took a cautious sip, and her expression softened. The other followed, holding the mug with both hands to warm her fingers. Jack sat down in the chair opposite them. "My name is Jack," he said, pointing to himself. "Jack." They looked at him for a moment before the one with slightly sharper features spoke. "Lyra," she said, pointing to herself. Then to the other girl, "Syrah." Jack nodded, repeating their names slowly so he wouldn't forget. He tried asking them what happened, where they came from, but their English was broken. Still, he gathered small pieces. They weren't here by choice. Their council had sent them, and the cuffs were a kind of punishment. Syrah said something in their own language, her voice low and trembling. Jack didn't understand the words, but he could feel the fear in her tone. He reached for a notepad and drew a simple picture of a house, pointing to it. "Safe here," he said. Tapping the picture, Lyra's eyes softened just a little, but she still looked toward the window, as if expecting danger to appear any second. Outside, the night pressed close around the farmhouse, in the woods at the edge of the field. A faint red light blinked between the trees. It moved slowly, pausing now and then. Scanning the area, the alien drone was still there, watching. Inside, Jack noticed one of the girl's cuffs glowing slightly brighter. He frowned. "What does that mean?" Lyra shook her head, searching for words. "Tracker. Signal. Coming," she said. Jack didn't like the sound of that. He decided they needed food. He opened the pantry and took out bread, cheese, and some leftover soup. The girls ate quickly, as if they hadn't had a proper meal in days. Syrah kept glancing at the door, her body tense like she was ready to run. Jack tried to make them feel more at ease, talking about simple things: the farm, the animals, the town. They didn't understand every word, but his calm tone seemed to help. When they had eaten, Jack showed them to the small guest room upstairs. The old wooden floor creaked under their light steps. The girls touched the bed cautiously, pressing down on the soft mattress. Lyra whispered something in awe, and Syrah let out the smallest smile Jack had seen from her. He left them there, telling them to rest, but downstairs, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Near midnight, as the wind picked up, Jack stepped outside to check the barn. The cold air bit at his skin. That's when he heard it, a faint humming sound, like a swarm of insects but mechanical. He froze, scanning the tree line. There, just beyond the fence, a dark shape hovered, its red light fixed directly on him. Before he could move, it darted back into the woods, vanishing without a sound. Jack's heart pounded. Someone, or something, was tracking the girls, and now it had seen him too. When he returned inside, he found Lyra standing at the bottom of the stairs, her blanket wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Her eyes searched his face. "Danger?" she asked softly. Jack hesitated, then nodded. "Maybe." Syrah appeared behind her, looking pale and worried. Jack locked the doors and closed the curtains. Whatever that thing is, he thought, it's not going to take them. The girls returned to the guest room, but Jack stayed awake, sitting in the living room with a shotgun across his lap. The firelight flickered on the walls. Every creak of the house, every whisper of the wind outside, kept him alert. In the shadows, the alien girls lay awake too, whispering to each other in their language. Neither of them had expected kindness from a human. They had been told humans were cruel, selfish, and dangerous. Yet here they were, under the roof of one who risked himself to shelter them. And deep inside, both sisters began to feel a tiny spark of something they hadn't felt in a long time: hope. The next morning, pale sunlight spilled through the curtains. Jack was already up, feeding the chickens outside. The air was crisp, and the sound of birds carried over the fields, inside the guest room. Lyra and Sira sat on the bed, still wrapped in their blankets, looking around the small space. Everything here was strange to them, the wooden walls, the small lamp, the ticking clock. Their homeworld had been filled with metal corridors and glowing panels, not this warm, earthy scent of wood and fabric. Jack knocked on the door gently. "Breakfast," he called. The sisters stepped out slowly, wearing the oversized clothes he had left for them. Lyra's shirt hung almost to her knees, and Sira's sleeves were rolled up 3 times. Jack couldn't help but smile. "We'll find something that fits you better," he said. They didn't understand all his words, but they caught his tone. At the table, there were eggs, bread, and a jug of milk. Sira reached for the milk and sniffed it curiously. When Jack poured it into her glass, she sipped it and made a face. Lyra laughed softly the first time Jack had heard her laugh. It was small, but it was real. After breakfast, Jack showed them around the farm. He pointed to the barn, the chicken coop, and the vegetable garden. Lyra bent down to touch the soil, rubbing it between her fingers. "Soft," she said in her slow English. Sira spotted a cat sitting on the fence, its tail flicking lazily. She knelt down, reaching out her hand, and the cat sniffed her fingers before jumping into her lap. Her eyes widened in surprise, and Jack saw something in her expression, like she was a child again, discovering something for the first time. As the day went on, Jack gave them small tasks. He showed them how to gather eggs, how to carry water. Sira tried to milk the cow, but when the cow flicked its tail and splashed her with milk, she jumped back, her cheeks puffing in frustration. Jack laughed, and even Lyra smiled at her sister's reaction. It was awkward, slow, and sometimes clumsy, but the sisters were learning, and with each passing hour, they spoke a little more English. Simple words: water, food, safe, but enough to make Jack see they were trying. That night, after dinner, they sat by the fireplace. Again, Jack showed them a photo album, pointing to each picture and saying the names: mother, father, brother. The sisters listened carefully, repeating the words in their soft accents. Lyra pointed to one picture of a dog and asked, "Safe?" Jack nodded, "Safe," and smiled. The sisters exchanged a look, as if safe was a word they hadn't felt in years. But outside, the world wasn't as safe as Jack hoped. In the dark fields beyond the house, something moved, a faint metallic glint caught the moonlight. The alien drone had returned, hovering low, scanning the farmhouse windows. It recorded every movement inside, before slipping back into the forest. Later, as the sisters prepared for bed, the cuffs on their wrists glowed faintly. Sira stared at hers, worry in her eyes. She whispered something in their language to Lyra. Lyra touched her sister's shoulder and said quietly, "Soon, we decide." Neither of them explained to Jack what that meant, but he could feel a heaviness in the air. Before sleeping, Jack stepped out onto the porch. He lit a cigarette, looking over the quiet land. His gut told him trouble was coming. But when he thought of the 2 girls upstairs, he knew he wouldn't let anything happen to them. Not while they were under his roof, inside, in the guest room. Lyra lay awake, listening to the sound of the wind. She remembered the day they were sentenced to the cold faces of the council, the promise that humans would hate them, and yet, here they were, with a human who had done nothing but show kindness. It confused her, it warmed her, and it scared her all at once. For the first time in a long while, she felt something strange in her chest, the beginning of trust. The next morning, clouds gathered over the farm, and the wind carried the smell of rain. Jack stood at the truck, checking the fuel. He glanced at the farmhouse. Lyra and Sira stood in the doorway, wrapped in scarves he had found for them. Their golden markings were faintly visible under the fabric, but at least it would draw less attention. "Come on," Jack said, motioning for them to get in. They had lived on the farm for a few days now, and it was time they saw the small town nearby. The dirt road was bumpy, and the sisters watched the passing trees with wide eyes. They had never seen so many shades of green before. The closer they got to town, the more buildings appeared. Small shops, houses with porches, and people walking on the sidewalks. Jack parked near the general store. "Stay close to me," he said, his tone gentle but firm. The sisters nodded, stepping down from the truck. Inside the store, the smell of coffee and bread filled the air. Lyra touched a loaf of bread softly. Curious about its texture, Sierra examined a jar of honey, tilting it to watch the golden liquid move. Some locals noticed them, pausing mid-conversation to stare. It wasn't every day. Two strangers with unusual eyes and bald markings walked into town. Whispers began, low at first, but growing. Jack ignored them and picked up supplies, flour, canned food, and a few shirts in smaller sizes for the girls. At the counter, the store owner, a woman in her 50s, smiled politely at Jack, but her eyes kept darting to the sisters. "New friends of yours?" she asked, her voice curious but cautious. Jack gave a short nod. "They're staying with me for a while." The woman raised an eyebrow, but didn't push further. As they left, the whispers followed them out the door. Outside, trouble found them faster than Jack expected. A group of 3 men leaned against a pickup truck near the corner. One of them, tall, with a scruffy beard, smirked when he saw the sisters. Well, what do we have here?" he said loudly. Another man laughed. "Looks like something out of one of those alien movies." The third one stepped closer, his eyes running over the sisters in a way that made Jack's jaw tighten. "They don't belong here," the bearded man said, his tone turning sharp. Jack stepped forward, putting himself between the men and the sisters. "They're with me," he said firmly. The bearded man's smirk faded into a scowl. "Yeah? Doesn't mean they should be here." The air grew tense, and people nearby slowed down to watch. Lyra's hand tightened on Sierra's arm, pulling her back slightly. Jack's voice stayed calm but carried weight. "Go on, mind your own business." For a moment, no one moved. Then the bearded man spat on the ground. "This isn't over," he muttered before walking away with his friends. Jack waited until they were gone before turning to the sisters. "You're safe," he said softly, but his eyes scanned the street, memorizing those men's faces. The rest of the shopping was quick, and they returned to the truck, but Jack couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching them. As they drove out of town, Lyra glanced out the back window. A black SUV had pulled onto the road behind them, following at a steady distance. She leaned closer to Jack's car. "Follow," she said quietly. Jack checked the mirror, his expression tightening. He took a sudden turn onto an old side road, one that led through the hills. The SUV didn't follow. It kept going straight, but Jack's suspicion only grew. By the time they reached the farm, rain had started to fall. Jack unloaded the supplies quickly, glancing toward the tree line more than once. The sisters carried lighter bags inside, their faces pale from the tension in town. That evening, while the rain tapped against the windows, Jack stepped out to check the barn. On the barn door, drawn in thick black paint, was a strange mark, a circle, with 3 slashes through it. It wasn't something any local would normally paint. Lyra saw it and froze, her voice trembling. "Council. Hunters," she whispered. Jack's eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" But before she could answer, a faint red glow appeared, deep in the woods, moving slowly between the trees. The same glow he had seen before, the same one that had been watching them. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the strange red glow in the forest didn't fade. It moved with a slow, deliberate pattern, like a predator circling before the strike. Jack stood on the porch, with his shotgun resting against his shoulder, watching the light shift between the trees. Lyra and Sierra stayed close together, just inside the doorway, their eyes fixed on the same glow. Jack's voice was low. "You've seen that before, haven't you?" Lyra hesitated, her lips pressing into a thin line. Then she stepped forward, the dim lamplight catching the golden markings on her cheeks. "Hunter drone," she said, her English heavy, but clear enough. "It find track send signal to Council, Sarah added. When find they come, her voice trembling at the last word. Jack's grip tightened on the shotgun. And what happens when they come? Neither sister answered, but their silence told him more than words could. The drone moved closer, its red glow now joined by a faint blue shimmer beneath it. Rainwater dripped from its metallic shell, and the soft hum of its engines carried across the field. Jack took a step down from the porch, but Lyra's voice stopped him. No bullets, no hurt. Shield, he paused, realizing she was right. The last time he had fired, it had done nothing. Instead, he led the sisters back inside, closing the door and locking it. The three of them sat near the fire, the shadows in the room deepening as the rain clouds covered the moon. After a long pause, Jack leaned forward. Tell me why you're here. The sisters exchanged a glance. Then Lyra spoke, her voice steady but low. On our world, Council rule all. No one speak against we speak. Syrah's eyes darkened. They say we, shame to family, sent to place where no one like us. To earth. Jack frowned. So they thought we'd turn you away. Lyra nodded slowly. Punishment is to be alone. To be unwanted. Jack's jaw tightened. He didn't like the kind of people who punished others for simply standing up. The cuffs on their wrists pulsed faintly with light. Jack asked about them, and Lyra explained cuffs. Send signal. Track our life. Council see everything, Sarah added. If we run far. Cuffs make pain. If Council call. Cuffs pull us. Jack studied the glowing metal, thinking of ways to break them. But before he could say anything, a deep hum filled the air outside. Louder than before. The drone had moved right up to the edge of the porch. Through the window, its metallic body gleamed, the size of a large dog. With long mechanical limbs folded beneath it, its red eye pulsed, scanning the walls of the farmhouse. Jack moved to the back door and opened it slightly, trying to get a better angle. But the moment he did, the drone's head snapped toward him, the hum turning into a sharp whine. A beam of light shot out, sweeping over him and the doorway. The cuffs on Lyra and Syrah's wrists glowed bright in response, sending a faint spark up their arms. Syrah winced, clutching her wrist. It called. Ship, she said quickly. Jack slammed the door shut, his mind racing. If a ship was coming, they didn't have much time. The sisters moved to the table, speaking rapidly in their language. Jack couldn't understand them, but he could hear the urgency in their tone. Lyra finally turned to him. We can hide, but not here. Council know this place now. Jack shook his head. Running means they'll just keep chasing you. Her eyes met his, steady and sharp. Then we fight. Outside, the drone began to circle the house, its legs unfolding, to walk along the wet ground. The sound of its metal feet on the porch steps made Jack's skin crawl. He knew it wasn't going to leave. It was waiting, marking their location. Every second it stayed meant the Council's ship was getting closer. Jack went to the storage room and pulled out an old metal case. Inside were tools, wires, and a welding torch. He set them on the table. If bullets can't hurt it, maybe we can blind it. Lyra stepped forward, studying the tools. Yes, we can, for the first time since meeting them. Jack saw a spark of determination in her eyes. The three of them worked quickly, making crude but sharp metal spikes and wiring them together. Rain pattered against the windows as they set the pieces near the doors. Syrah filled a bucket with water and set it by the porch, whispering something in her language that sounded like a prayer. By the time the traps were ready, the hum of the drone had grown restless. Its red eye glowed brighter, and it let out a sharp electronic tone that echoed through the night. Far above, hidden by the clouds, something answered with a distant rumble. Lyra's voice was barely more than a whisper. Ship. Coming. Jack looked at the sisters. Then we'd better be ready. The wind howled across the open fields, carrying the smell of rain and metal. Jack stood in the center of the farmhouse, shotgun in one hand, a wrench in the other. Beside him, Lyra tightened the last strap of her makeshift weapon, a sharpened piece of metal fixed to a wooden handle. Sira checked the bucket of water by the porch, her hands trembling slightly. Outside, the hum of the hunter drone grew louder, circling like a predator that knew its prey couldn't escape. Through the window, Jack could see its red eye glowing. Scanning every inch of the farmhouse, the cuffs on the sisters' wrists glowed brighter, the pulses matching the drone's rhythm. Soon. "Ship here," Lyra said quietly, her voice steady, but her eyes holding fear. Jack glanced at her. "If they come for you, they'll have to go through me first." Sira looked up sharply. "Why? You human." "We not same." Jack stepped closer, his voice low. "Because you don't leave people behind, not when they need you." The drone stopped moving for a moment, its red light locking on the front door. Jack could feel the tension in the air, like the whole night was holding its breath. Then it moved fast, leaping up the porch steps, its metal feet clanging against the wood. Siro threw the bucket of water forward, the liquid splashing across its shell. The drone shuddered as sparks danced along its body, its shield flickering. Lyra darted forward, striking hard with her weapon, the sharpened metal scraping deep into one of its joints. The machine let out a sharp electronic screech, stumbling back. Jack raised the shotgun and fired, not aiming to destroy but to drive it away from the door. The impact knocked it off the porch, sending it skidding into the wet grass. But the victory was short. The drone steadied itself, its red eye now burning brighter. It began projecting a thin beam of light straight into the sky. The sisters froze. "It calls ship now," Lyra shouted. Jack's jaw tightened. "Then we finish it before they get here." The three of them moved together, Jack reloading quickly, while Lyra circled to the side. Ciro grabbed another tool from the table, a heavy hammer, and ran out into the rain. The drone swiveled toward her, firing a small dart that embedded into the ground where she had been a moment earlier. She rolled and came up swinging, smashing the hammer into its leg joint. Metal cracked. The drone staggered. Jack took the chance and fired again, hitting its damaged side. The machine fell, its red light flickering. For a moment, silence returned except for the rain. Then a low, distant rumble rolled through the clouds above. Lyra looked up, her face pale. "Ship close." Minutes only. Jack could see the faint shimmer of something breaking through the cloud cover, a shape large enough to block the moonlight, moving slowly but steadily toward them. They pulled the damaged drone into the barn, hiding it under sacks of grain. Jack closed the barn doors tight. If the council soldiers didn't see it right away, maybe they would have a few seconds advantage. Inside the farmhouse, the sisters stood by the window, watching the growing light in the sky. Sira's voice was quiet. "If they take us, you must run." Jack shook his head firmly. "Not happening." Lyra stepped forward, her eyes meeting his. "You fight for us, even when no reason." "Why?" Jack smiled faintly. "Because sometimes the right thing doesn't need a reason." The light from above grew stronger, and the sound of engines vibrated through the ground. Dust and rain swirled as a massive silver craft descended toward the field. Its underside opened, revealing a ramp and figures in dark armor. The sisters stepped closer to Jack, their shoulders brushing against his. They were outnumbered, outmatched, and yet none of them moved back. Jack's voice was calm, but his grip on the shotgun was tight. "We hold our ground, no matter what." Lyra tightened her weapon in her hands, Sira's jaw set in determination. Through the swirling rain, the first armored figure stepped onto the wet grass. Its helmet reflected the farmhouse lights, and in its hand was a long staff-like weapon. Behind it, more figures followed, their movements precise. Their eyes locked on the sisters. The council soldiers had come for their prisoners. But what they found instead was a human willing to fight them all. And for the first time since arriving on Earth, Lyra and Sira realized something. They weren't just surviving anymore. They had someone willing to choose them over his own safety. The rain fell harder, thunder rolled in the distance, and Jack took the first step toward the soldiers. The night was no longer silent, it was ready for war. Rain poured over the field, soaking the earth. Jack stood firm in front of the farmhouse, his shotgun pointed down but ready. Lyra and Sira stood beside him, their clothes plastered to their skin from the downpour, but their eyes clear and steady. The silver council ship loomed over them, its engines humming like the growl of some giant beast. Figures in black armor advanced slowly, their faces hidden behind smooth helmets. The lead soldier stopped a few steps away, his voice metallic through the helmet speaker. "Stand aside, human. These prisoners belong to the council." Jack's grip on the shotgun tightened. They belong to no one. The soldier tilted his head slightly. "You would protect them, even against your own survival?" Jack didn't flinch, especially then. Behind the soldier, others fanned out, forming a half circle. Lyra stepped forward, her cuffs glowing brighter now, the pulse quickening. "If we go, no return," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the rain. Sira's hand brushed against Jack's arm, a silent plea. Jack's heart pounded, but he didn't move aside. The soldier raised his staff weapon, the tip glowing with dangerous light. Lyra's instincts screamed at her to step back, but she stayed where she was. Jack spoke again, his voice carrying over the storm. "You want them? You'll have to take me too." For a moment, no one moved. The rain splashed against armor and skin. The only sound was the deep hum of the ship above. Then, unexpectedly, the soldier lowered his weapon. The others did the same, their movements slow and deliberate. A figure stepped out from the shadows of the ramp, taller than the rest, wearing dark robes over the armor. The hood fell back, revealing a face lined with age, but marked with the same golden streaks as Lyra and Sira. Her eyes studied the human, then the two girls. "You pass," she said simply, her voice calm but commanding. Lyra frowned, not understanding. "Pass." The woman nodded. The punishment was never exile. It was test. Sira's eyes widened. "Test? Yes," the woman continued. "The council wished to see if you could inspire loyalty, compassion, even from those outside our kind." She glanced at Jack. "This human chose to stand with you, to fight for you, even when he had nothing to gain. You are free." The cuffs on their wrists flashed once, then dissolved into thin air. The sudden absence of their weight made Lyra and Sira glance at each other in disbelief. Jack let out a slow breath, lowering the shotgun. "So what now?" he asked, his voice still cautious. The woman stepped closer. "Now they may return to our world, honored, or remain here if they choose." Lyra's gaze turned to Jack, her lips parting to speak but no words coming. Sira's hand found her sister's, gripping it tightly. The rain fell harder, but the moment between them felt warm. Jack gave a faint smile. "It's your choice, but I'd be lying if I said I wouldn't miss you if you left." The sisters looked at each other, their eyes speaking what words could not. They had been cast down to earth expecting hatred. They had found suspicion, yes, but they had also found kindness, safety, and a man who treated them not as outsiders, but as people worth protecting. Lyra turned to the councilwoman, her voice clear despite the rain. "We stay." The woman nodded once, a flicker of approval in her eyes, then, "Your path is yours." The soldiers stepped back, the ship's ramp closing slowly. The engines roared as the great vessel lifted into the clouds, its lights fading into the night. Silence returned, broken only by the rain on the roof. Jack looked at the sisters. "Well, I guess we're stuck with each other now." Sira let out a rare laugh, small but bright. Lyra smiled. "Not stuck. Home." They walked back toward the farmhouse together, the warmth of the fire inside calling to them. The red glow of the hunter drone was gone. The threat lifted, for the first time since they had arrived. Lyra and Sira felt no weight on their shoulders. Their punishment had brought them to a place they never expected, a home, a family, and something far deeper. As they stepped inside, Jack hung his shotgun on the wall and tossed them each a towel. The sisters dried their hair, still smiling softly to themselves. Outside, the storm began to ease, the first hints of dawn breaking over the wet fields, and in the quiet that followed, three unlikely companions began the next chapter of their lives. Not as prisoners, not as strangers, but as people bound by something stronger than any counsel, decree, choice, trust, and love.